Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Conversation. Theo Barrett paused outside his children's bedroom, hand raised to knock on the door. It was nearly midnight, and he'd just returned from a 3-day business trip to Boston. Voices filtered through the crack beneath the door. His 14-year-old twins, Zoe and Dylan, were still awake despite the late hour. He was about to announce his presence when he heard his daughter's voice, clear as day. "Who would you pick after they divorce?" Zoe asked, her tone casual as if discussing lunch options. Theo's hand froze midair. Divorce? He and Natalie had been arguing more frequently, but divorce had never been mentioned. A cold weight settled in his stomach. "I don't know," Dylan replied. "Dad's more fun, but Mom has the bigger house." Theo leaned closer, his heartbeat quickening. He knew he shouldn't eavesdrop, but he couldn't walk away. "Mom's new friend Mark, Zoe said with teenage confidence. "He's taking us to Hawaii and getting me that sports car. Mom told me he's probably our biological father. They were together in college. Makes sense why we got blue eyes similar to him." The hallway tilted around Theo. He gripped the wall for support, his wedding band suddenly heavy on his finger. 14 years of marriage collapsed around him like a house of cards. The twins had his dark hair, but Natalie's fair complexion, and those startling blue eyes that neither he nor Natalie possessed, eyes he'd always attributed to Natalie's father. His mind raced through a catalog of memories. Natalie's inexplicable business trips, her constant texting, the way she angled her phone away from him. Mark Holloway, the college boyfriend who had mysteriously reappeared in their lives 6 months ago as a potential investor in Natalie's interior design business. "I don't trust Mark," Dylan said, his voice dropping. "He looks at Dad weird, like he's waiting for something." "You're paranoid," Zoe scoffed. "Mark's cool. And technically, if he is our bio dad, they wouldn't even need to do those stupid DNA tests for the custody thing." Theo's vision blurred. The children he'd raised, had they never been his? He backed away from the door, moving silently down the hallway to the master bedroom. Natalie was visiting her sister in Chicago, or so she claimed. The king-sized bed loomed empty, mockingly spacious. He packed a small bag, his mind racing through 14 years of memories now tainted with doubt. He left a brief note on the kitchen counter. "Need some space. We'll call tomorrow." Then he slipped out into the night. The suburban home he'd helped design suddenly feeling like a stranger's residence. Theo drove aimlessly through the sleeping neighborhoods of Lakeside, Connecticut, eventually checking into the Harbor View Hotel downtown. Sleep evaded him as he stared at the ceiling, replaying his children's conversation. By dawn, grief had crystallized into something harder, colder. He'd built everything from nothing. The son of a factory worker and a waitress, Theo had clawed his way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, eventually founding Barrett Architectural Solutions, now one of Connecticut's premier firms. He'd met Natalie during his senior year, fallen instantly for her quick wit and ambition. When she announced her pregnancy 6 months into their relationship, he proposed immediately, overjoyed at the prospect of the family he'd always wanted. As morning light filtered through the hotel curtains, Theo opened his laptop and began searching for information on Mark Holloway. The man had an impressive digital footprint, CEO of Holloway Investments, divorced twice, no children. Numerous photos showed him sailing, playing golf with celebrities, attending charity galas. And there, in a photo from 12 years ago, Mark stood beside a much younger Natalie at an alumni event, his arm casually draped around her shoulder, while Theo had been home with the toddler twins. Theo's phone rang just after 8 a.m. Dylan's name flashed on the screen, unusual for his normally late-rising son. "Dad," Dylan's voice cracked with tension. "Where are you? You need to come home. I needed some air, buddy. I left a note." "Dad, I found something in Mark's phone." Dylan's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's here with Mom. They came back early this morning. I heard them talking and snuck into the guest room after they went to the kitchen. His phone was charging. There are messages, Dad. He wants you dead." A strange calm settled over Theo. "What kind of messages?" "Screenshots of your medical records. Something about your heart medication. Messages to someone called Phoenix about the perfect accident. Dad, I'm scared. Listen carefully, Dylan. Delete your call history with me. Act normal. I'm coming home, but not right away. I need you to do exactly as I say. 30 minutes later, Theo Barrett sat in his hotel room, making calls that would change everything. The husband and father who'd left his home the previous night was gone. What remained was something colder, more calculating, a man with nothing left to lose. Chapter 2. The Investigation. Rain pounded against the windshield as Theo parked his Audi several blocks from home. He pulled his baseball cap lower over his eyes and approached the modest colonial where Vernon Drake lived. Vernon had been Theo's college roommate and was now a private investigator specializing in digital forensics. Vernon answered the door in sweatpants and a faded Yankees t-shirt, coffee mug in hand. Jesus, Theo. You look like hell. I need your help, Vern. No questions, no paperwork. Inside Vernon's cluttered home office, Theo outlined what he needed. Comprehensive surveillance on Mark Holloway and Natalie, access to their communications, financial records, movements. Vernon whistled. That's gray area stuff, Theo. Some of it's outright illegal. My kids might not be mine, and someone's planning my death. Theo's voice remained steady. I'll pay triple your rate. Cash. 3 hours later, Vernon had taught Theo the basics of surveillance technology, pinpoint GPS trackers, remote access software, audio recording devices disguised as everyday objects. Theo had once designed security systems for high-end properties. He understood the principles. This isn't just about evidence gathering anymore, is it? Vernon asked as Theo prepared to leave. No, Theo replied. It's about survival. His next stop was the office of Dr. Lena Walsh, his cardiologist for the past 5 years. The heart arrhythmia he'd developed in his 30s wasn't life-threatening, but it required medication and regular monitoring. If someone wanted to use his medical condition against him, Dr. Walsh might have insights. The elegant doctor greeted him with concern. You're not scheduled until next month, Theo. Is everything all right? Has anyone requested my medical records recently? Even unofficially? Dr. Walsh frowned. Patient confidentiality is strictly. Lena, please. I think someone is trying to use my condition to harm me. Her professional demeanor cracked. There was an incident last week. My assistant reported a call from your wife requesting copies of your most recent tests. We sent them to your home address, as she's listed as your emergency contact. Theo's stomach tightened. Did you note any irregularities in my prescriptions? Dr. Walsh hesitated, then turned to her computer. Your amiodarone was refilled twice last month. That's unusual. It should only be once. I only refilled it once, Theo said quietly. Dr. Walsh's eyes widened. Theo, if someone is tampering with your medication, I need documentation of my current prescription and a new supply from a different pharmacy. And I need you to not mention this conversation to anyone. By late afternoon, Theo had visited his bank, withdrawn a substantial sum in cash, and opened a new account at a different institution. He'd contacted his company's vice president, Franco Delgado, claiming a family emergency that would require remote work for the foreseeable future. His final stop was a meeting with Nora Blackwell, a high-powered divorce attorney known for her ruthless efficiency. Nora's downtown office projected exactly the image her reputation suggested. Sleek, expensive, intimidating. Mr. Barrett, she said, her handshake firm, your call mentioned urgent circumstances. For the next hour, Theo outlined his situation. Nora took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When he finished, she removed her glasses and leaned forward. Let me be clear, Mr. Barrett. If you're correct about paternity fraud and potential homicide planning, you're in an extraordinarily strong position legally. But gathering evidence properly is crucial. Nothing obtained illegally will help in court. I understand, Theo replied, though they both recognized the subtext. I'll draw up preliminary paperwork, Nora continued. In the meantime, secure your assets. Connecticut is an equitable distribution state, but equitable can be interpreted broadly. As he left Nora's office, Theo's phone vibrated with a text from Vernon. Target 1 made a withdrawal of $50,000 cash today. Target 2 booked flights to Grand Cayman for next week. 3 tickets. 3 tickets. Natalie, Mark, and who else? A cold certainty settled in Theo's gut. They were planning to take one of the children, likely Zoe, who seemed more receptive to Mark. His daughter's casual words echoed in his mind. He's probably our biological father. Theo checked into a different hotel that night, paid cash, and used a false name. In his room, he meticulously arranged surveillance equipment on the bed. Tomorrow, he would return home, not as the betrayed husband, but as a man with a plan. The pieces were falling into place, a strategy forming in his mind that would ensure not just his survival, but his vengeance. The rain continued to fall outside his window as Theo opened his laptop and began composing an email to his old college friend, Sebastian Walsh, now a cybersecurity specialist living off the grid in rural Montana. The subject line read simply, Phoenix. Chapter 3, The Infiltration. Theo arrived home precisely at 7:30 a.m., timing his return to coincide with Natalie's morning yoga routine. The house was quiet, the kitchen immaculate. He placed his overnight bag on the counter, intentionally making noise as he filled the coffee maker. Footsteps on the stairs announced Natalie's presence. She appeared in yoga pants and a fitted tank top, her chestnut hair pulled into a perfect ponytail. For a split second, surprise flickered across her face before she composed herself. "Theo," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't expect you back so early." He offered a practice smile. The Portland meeting finished ahead of schedule. The lie came easily. He'd invented the Portland trip as cover for his night away. "Where are the kids?" "Zoe's still sleeping. Dylan left early for swim practice." She poured herself a glass of water, movements precise. "Mark dropped by last night. He has some exciting news about potential investors for my business." "That's great," Theo replied, noting how naturally she incorporated Mark into the conversation. "I'd love to hear more about it. Maybe we could all have dinner tonight." Natalie's eyes widened slightly. Theo had never before suggested socializing with Mark. "Sure, I'll text him." As she left for yoga, Theo moved swiftly through the house. In the master bedroom, he carefully placed 3 miniature cameras, one overlooking their bed, one focused on Natalie's vanity, and one with a view of her desk where she often worked on her laptop. Next, he installed a keylogger on their shared home computer and another on Natalie's tablet while it charged on her nightstand. In the guest bathroom, recently designated as Mark's bathroom whenever he visited, Theo replaced the air freshener with Vernon's modified version containing both a camera and audio recorder. He had 45 minutes before Natalie returned from yoga, more than enough time. His final stop was the twins' rooms. Dylan's door was open, the room its usual disaster of sports equipment and gaming accessories. Theo quickly installed software on his son's computer that would forward all communications to an email address only he could access. A necessary invasion of privacy to protect his son. Zoe's room was locked, unusual for a weekday morning. Theo used his master key, entering silently. His daughter lay sprawled across her bed, headphones on, fast asleep. On her desk sat a new MacBook Pro, still in its box, the receipt tucked underneath. Theo checked the price, $3,499. The buyer's name, Mark Holloway. A muscle twitched in Theo's jaw. Next to the laptop box was a brochure for Hawaii's most exclusive resort and a handwritten note. "For my favorite girl. Can't wait for our adventure. Mark." Theo photographed everything with his phone before carefully installing surveillance software on Zoe's existing laptop, charging on her nightstand. As he worked, he noticed a photo frame on her desk that hadn't been there before. Zoe and Mark at what appeared to be a fancy restaurant, his arm around her shoulders, both smiling broadly. In the background, Natalie looked on approvingly. By the time Natalie returned from yoga, Theo was showered and dressed for work, the perfect image of normalcy. "I'm thinking of working from home today," he announced casually. "I've missed you all." Natalie's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's nice. I'm meeting clients this afternoon, but I'll be home for dinner." Throughout the day, Theo maintained his facade while monitoring the surveillance feeds from his home office. At 2:13 p.m., his phone buzzed with an alert, motion detected in the master bedroom. On his tablet, he watched as Natalie entered their room, locked the door, and made a call. He's acting weird, she said to someone, Mark, presumably. Too nice. I think he suspects something. A pause as she listened. No, he doesn't know about the medication yet. I've been careful. Another pause. The tickets are refundable, but I'd rather not change the plan. Zoe's already excited about Hawaii. Theo's fingers tightened around his tablet. The lawyer says with the medical report about his condition and the paternity test results, we can push for full custody. Natalie's voice lowered. Once the insurance pays out, we'll have enough to start over somewhere warm. Permanent vacation. The tablet screen blurred as rage coursed through Theo. They weren't just planning to leave him. They were planning to kill him and take his children. His children. DNA be damned. He had raised them, loved them, been there for every milestone. His phone vibrated with another notification. Vernon had completed the background check on Phoenix, the contact in Mark's messages. Phoenix's real name was Lawrence Keller, a former pharmaceutical rep with a history of insurance fraud and a suspended medical license. Theo took a deep breath, forcing himself to think clearly. The dinner tonight would be crucial, his opportunity to assess Mark directly, to understand the man who intended to steal his life. He opened his desk drawer and removed a small recording device, slipping it into his pocket. Then he texted Dylan, coming home for dinner. Need to talk privately after. Delete this message. Dylan's response came almost immediately. K-Dad. Careful what you eat or drink. Overheard them talking. Delete this too. A cold smile spread across Theo's face. His son was smart, perhaps smarter than Mark and Natalie realized. Tonight would be just the beginning. He opened his laptop and sent a pre-written email to Sebastian Walsh in Montana. The subject line now read, Phoenix Rising. Code green. The trap was set. Chapter 4. The Count to Move. Dinner was a masterclass in deception. Theo played the oblivious husband perfectly. Cordial to Mark, attentive to Natalie, engaged with the twins. He watched as Mark charmed his family, noting how the man subtly mirrored his own mannerisms, as if practicing for the role he intended to steal. Mark Holloway was objectively handsome, tall and athletic with salt and pepper hair and those piercing blue eyes that matched the twins. His tales of adventure captivated Zoe, while Dylan maintained a cautious distance, occasionally catching Theo's eye with subtle warning glances. You should join me for golf this weekend, Theo, Mark suggested as Natalie served coffee and dessert. The Lakeside Country Club has an excellent course. I'd like that, Theo replied, accepting the coffee Natalie handed him. He caught Dylan's almost imperceptible head shake and discreetly set the cup aside, untouched. Though work's been hectic lately, all the more reason to relax, Mark insisted. Life's too short to work yourself to death. The double meaning wasn't lost on Theo. He watched as Mark added 2 sugars to his own coffee, stirring. The man's hands were steady, the hands of someone accustomed to calculated moves. After dinner, the adults moved to the living room while the twins retreated upstairs. Theo excused himself momentarily and slipped into Dylan's room. His son sat rigid on his bed, expression grim beyond his 14 years. They switched your heart meds, Dad. I found the bottles in Mom's bathroom drawer yesterday. One labeled correctly, one with different pills inside. Theo squeezed Dylan's shoulder. I need you to trust me. I'm handling this. Dylan's eyes welled. Are you really not our biological father? The question pierced Theo's heart. DNA doesn't make a father, Dylan. I've been there since before you were born. Nothing changes that. Mom's planning to take Zoe to Hawaii next week. Not me. She says I can stay with Grandma Palmer. That's not happening, Theo said firmly. No one's going anywhere. I promise. Back downstairs, Theo rejoined the adults, his mind calculating each move like a chess player 12 steps ahead. When Mark mentioned his upcoming business trip to New York, Theo seized the opportunity. I'm heading there myself next week. Perhaps we could share the drive? I hate navigating Manhattan traffic alone. Mark hesitated just a fraction too long before agreeing enthusiastically. Natalie's smile froze momentarily, then resumed. After Mark departed, Natalie immediately began cleaning up, her movements brisk and purposeful. You've never shown interest in Mark before. What changed? Theo leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her. He seems important to you. I thought I should make an effort. Natalie paused, dish towel in hand. That's considerate. He mentioned something interesting about Hawaii, Theo added casually. Beautiful this time of year, apparently. The dish towel twisted in Natalie's hands. Just casual conversation. Of course. Theo pushed himself away from the counter. I'm exhausted. Think I'll turn in early. In the master bathroom, he carefully checked his medications, confirming Dylan's warning. The capsules in one bottle had been meticulously replaced with something similar, but not identical. He flushed them down the toilet and replaced them with the new prescription Dr. Walsh had provided. By midnight, when Natalie finally came to bed, Theo was feigning sleep. Through narrowed eyes, he watched as she checked his nightstand drawer where he kept his medication, a satisfied expression crossing her face when she found the tampered bottle apparently undisturbed. The next morning brought torrential rain, matching Theo's mood as he executed the next phase of his plan. He called Vernon from his secure line while driving to work. I need everything you have on Lawrence Keller, a.k.a. Phoenix, and I need surveillance on him immediately. Vernon whistled. Already done. You want to see this? The guy's been staying at the Lakeside Motor Lodge under a false name. He's got quite the pharmacy in his room, including some interesting cardiac medications that, if mixed with your prescription, would cause a massive heart attack that would look natural. Send me everything, Theo instructed, his voice cold. And Vernon? I need a particular kind of specialist. Someone who can create very convincing scenarios. By mid-afternoon, Theo had received Vernon's files and arranged a meeting with Silas Morgan, a former film industry special effects expert who now worked on private projects for exclusive clients. Silas's specialty was creating realistic scenarios that could be documented convincingly. Accidents, injuries, compromising situations. It needs to be indistinguishable from reality, Theo explained in Silas's warehouse studio. Enough to convince a seasoned lawyer and potentially law enforcement. Silas, a wiry man with tattoo-covered arms, nodded appreciatively. This is about the highest level of work I do. It won't be cheap. Money isn't an issue, Theo replied. Timeline is. I need everything ready within 5 days. That evening, Theo met with Sebastian Walsh, his cybersecurity expert friend, at a truck stop 50 miles from Lakeside. Sebastian looked exactly as Theo remembered, bearded, intense, perpetually hunched over his laptop, as if protecting it from invisible threats. You were right, Sebastian confirmed, turning his screen toward Theo. Mark Holloway has been systemically accessing your business accounts, gathering information on your projects, clients, financial status. He's created a shadow profile of your entire operation. Show me everything, Theo demanded. For the next hour, Sebastian detailed how Mark had infiltrated Barrett Architectural Solutions' digital infrastructure, placing himself strategically to step into Theo's professional role after his unfortunate passing. He's thorough, Sebastian admitted grudgingly. But he made one critical mistake. He used the same password pattern across multiple platforms. I've gained access to his entire digital footprint. Emails, cloud storage, banking, everything. What about the paternity claims? Theo asked, the question that had haunted him for days finally voiced. Sebastian's expression softened. I found emails between Mark and Natalie dating back 15 years, before you were married. They discuss a pregnancy, but it's unclear if it resulted in the twins. There's no definitive confirmation either way, just Mark's repeated assertions that those kids could be mine. Theo absorbed this, his expression unreadable. I need something more concrete. Already handled. I accessed the hospital records from when the twins were born. Standard blood typing was done. Based on your blood type and Natalie's, the twins could genetically be yours. Mark's recent medical records show a blood type that's actually incompatible. A weight lifted from Theo's chest. So his claims are scientifically impossible. Unless medical science is wrong about how blood types are inherited, Sebastian confirmed. Which it isn't. Armed with this knowledge, Theo returned home prepared for the next phase. He found Natalie in their bedroom, packing a small suitcase. Going somewhere, he asked casually. She startled, then recovered smoothly. Just overnight to my sister's. Some family stuff. Give Elaine my best, Theo replied, knowing full well that Natalie's sister was currently vacationing in Europe according to her social media posts, information he'd verified through Vernon. After Natalie left, Theo called Dylan into his home office. "I need your help with something important," he told his son. "Something that might seem strange, but is necessary to protect our family." Dylan's expression grew serious. "Anything, Dad. I need you to reach out to Zoe. Tell her you overheard Mom and Mark discussing a surprise family trip to Hawaii. Act excited about it." Dylan frowned. "But they're planning to leave without us." "I know, but I need Zoe to start asking questions, specifically about why you're not included. Can you do that without raising suspicion?" Dylan nodded slowly. "I can try. But Zoe's totally bought into Mark's act. She might tell them I said something." "That's okay," Theo assured him. "In fact, I'm counting on it." Later that night, as the twins slept, Theo carefully installed the final surveillance equipment throughout the house, particularly in locations where Mark and Natalie frequently conversed. Then he drove to the Lakeside Motor Lodge, where Lawrence Phoenix Keller was staying. Room 118 was dark when Theo approached. Using the electronic key card Vernon had somehow procured, he silently entered the room. The tangled sheets of the unoccupied bed and a laptop open on the desk suggested Keller had stepped out momentarily. Working quickly, Theo installed miniature cameras and attached a nearly undetectable device to Keller's laptop. Then he photographed the array of prescription medications and medical equipment scattered across the bathroom counter. Just as he finished, headlights swept across the motel window. Theo slipped out the back door seconds before Keller returned. From his car, parked across the street, Theo watched as Keller entered his room, followed minutes later by Mark Holloway. Through the monitoring software on his phone, Theo listened to their conversation with cold satisfaction. "Barrett's still alive," Mark was saying, his voice tense. "Natalie swears she switched the medication weeks ago." "Some people have higher tolerance," Keller replied. "We may need to accelerate the timeline. The Grand Cayman property won't wait forever." "About the girl convinced already," Mark continued. "The boy's more difficult, but he's irrelevant to the inheritance structure. Once Barrett's gone, Natalie gets control of everything as the twins' guardian. With the medical records I've compiled about his heart condition and mental instability, his death will look completely natural." Theo's grip tightened on his phone as he continued to listen. By the time he drove away an hour later, he had enough recorded evidence to destroy both men. But that wasn't the plan. Simple destruction wasn't enough. Not anymore. Back home, Theo sat in his darkened office, making final arrangements. His laptop screen illuminated his face as he typed an email to Nora Blackwell. Proceeding with Plan B. Timeline accelerated. All assets secured as discussed. Next, he sent a comprehensive file to Franco Delgado at his firm, detailing projects in progress and contingency plans for extended absence. Finally, he opened his personal safe and removed 3 passports and identification sets Vernon had procured, high-quality documents that would withstand scrutiny at any border. The groundwork was laid. In 3 days, Mark Holloway would drive with Theo to New York. It would be the last business trip either of them would take for a very long time. Chapter 5. The Deception. The morning of the New York trip dawned bright and cold. Theo loaded his overnight bag into Mark's gleaming BMW X7, noting the meticulous interior. Everything about Mark Holloway was calculated for effect: the luxury car, the designer watch, the perfectly tailored suit. The man was a walking advertisement for the life he coveted. "Beautiful machine," Theo commented as Mark navigated through early morning traffic. Mark patted the dashboard affectionately. "German engineering. Accepts nothing less than perfection." Unlike your planning, Theo thought silently. The 3-hour drive gave Theo the opportunity to observe Mark uninterrupted. The man was good, charismatic, intelligent, careful with his words. He spoke enthusiastically about architectural innovations, clearly having studied Theo's business thoroughly. Occasionally, he dropped subtle references to Theo's health. "You're looking a bit pale today," Mark noted as they crossed into New York State. "Everything all right? Natalie mentioned you've been under medical observation." "Just the usual heart stuff," Theo replied dismissively. "Nothing serious." Mark nodded sympathetically. My uncle had similar issues. Went suddenly in his sleep. The family was devastated, but the doctors said it was peaceful. The threat couldn't have been clearer if Mark had pulled a gun. Theo feigned concern, then strategically changed the subject to their accommodations. The plaza has excellent room service. I usually order a nightcap to help with sleep in the city. Good idea. Mark agreed readily. I'll join you. At the hotel, they checked into adjacent rooms, agreeing to meet for dinner after their respective meetings. Theo's meeting was genuine, a potential new client interested in sustainable corporate headquarters. Mark claimed he was meeting investors, though Theo knew from Sebastian's intelligence that Mark had instead scheduled a consultation with a high-end realtor specializing in Caribbean properties. When they reconvened for dinner, Theo steered them to an upscale steakhouse where he was known to the staff. He called ahead with specific instructions about their service. I've taken the liberty of ordering us their signature cocktails, Theo said as they were seated. An old Manhattan recipe they're famous for. The drinks arrived promptly, identical crystal tumblers with amber liquid and maraschino cherries. Theo raised his glass in toast. To successful ventures. Mark smiled, raising his own glass. And new beginnings. They clinked glasses and both drank. Theo watched as Mark consumed his drink, noting with satisfaction how the man's pupils began to dilate slightly after 15 minutes. The specialized compound Silas had provided was working exactly as described. Tasteless, odorless, and designed to render the consumer highly suggestible while maintaining apparent consciousness. By the time they returned to the hotel, Mark was still functioning but increasingly pliable. In Theo's room, he ordered the promised nightcap, more for appearance than necessity. As they drank, Theo gradually steered the conversation toward Natalie. She's changed over the years, Theo mused. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really knew her. Mark's defenses were sufficiently lowered by now. Natalie's always been adaptable, he agreed, his words slightly slurred. It's what I've always loved about her. How long? Theo asked simply. Mark blinked slowly. How long what? How long have you been seeing my wife? Under normal circumstances, Mark might have denied everything. But the compound had rendered him incapable of maintaining his careful facade. On and off since college, he admitted, we never really ended things. Even when she met you. Theo nodded, as if this were a perfectly reasonable conversation. And the twins? A sly smile crossed Mark's face. She was pregnant when she met you. Convenient timing for a struggling architecture student to play hero, wasn't it? Stepping in to rescue the pregnant girl. The confirmation should have devastated Theo, but Sebastian's blood type information kept him centered. Mark was lying, either deliberately or because he truly believed it. Tell me about Phoenix, Theo pressed. Mark's expression grew guarded, even through his compromised state. Don't know what you mean. Lawrence Keller, Theo clarified. The man you hired to help with my heart condition. Mark stared, momentarily breaking through the compound's effects. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know, Theo interrupted smoothly. What matters is what happens next. He reached for his phone and pulled up a video. Footage from the hidden cameras in Keller's motel room, clearly showing Mark discussing the plan to murder Theo. This is currently being held by my attorney, Theo explained calmly, along with evidence of the tamper medication, the forged medical records, and the planned identity theft of my business assets. Mark's face drained of color. You can't prove anything. I already have. Theo leaned forward. But here's what's going to happen instead of what you planned. You're going to sign some documents for me tonight. Then you're going to return to Connecticut and break things off with Natalie, permanently. You'll tell her you've reconciled with your ex-wife. You'll never contact her, me, or my children again. Your children? Mark sneered, despite his compromised state. Those are my kids. My blood. Theo slid a folder across the table. Medical science disagrees. Blood type analysis makes it biologically impossible for you to be their father. You can request independent verification if you like. Zoe and Dylan are my children in every way that matters. He opened the folder to reveal legal documents. These papers transfer your ownership of 3 offshore properties to a trust one control. They also include your confession to conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and identity theft. Sign them, and they stay with my lawyer unless you violate our agreement. Refuse, and the police receive everything tomorrow morning. Mark stared at the papers, sweat beading on his forehead despite the room's cool temperature. You're bluffing. Am I? Theo held up his phone again, now showing an email draft addressed to the New York Police Department with all the evidence attached. One button, Mark. That's all it takes to destroy everything you've built. The compound, Mark's realization of his precarious position, and Theo's ruthless precision combined effectively. Mark signed each document with shaking hands. What happens now? He asked, voice hollow. Now you sleep, Theo replied, as Mark's eyelids grew heavy, the final stage of the compound taking effect. When you wake up, you'll remember our agreement, but not how it was reached. You'll believe we had a frank discussion as gentlemen, and you chose the honorable path. As Mark slumped unconscious in his chair, Theo gathered the signed documents and made several calls. First to Silas, confirming the compound's effects would leave no trace by morning. Next to Vernon, instructing him to maintain surveillance on Mark and Keller to ensure compliance. Finally, to Sebastian, who confirmed he had successfully transferred control of Mark's offshore accounts as per the signed authorizations. Theo then helped the semi-conscious Mark back to his own room, positioning him carefully in bed. He placed an empty liquor bottle from the minibar on the nightstand to suggest overconsumption as the explanation for Mark's memory gaps. Back in his own room, Theo made one final call to Lawrence Keller. "Mr. Keller," he said when the man answered groggily. "You don't know me, but I know a great deal about you, including your current location, your suspended medical license, and your arrangement with Mark Holloway regarding my cardiac situation." Silence on the other end. "I'm offering you a choice," Theo continued. "Leave the country using the passport and tickets waiting for you at JFK's Terminal 4 Storage Locker 872, along with $50,000 in cash. Or face prosecution for attempted murder, practicing medicine without a license, and fraud. You have 12 hours to decide." By morning, Mark Holloway was subdued and compliant, remembering their gentleman's agreement, just as Theo had suggested he would. They drove back to Connecticut in near silence. When they reached Lakeside, Mark dropped Theo at his office rather than his home, his first act of compliance with their new arrangement. Later that day, Vernon confirmed that Keller had taken the offered passport and flight to Costa Rica. The first phase of Theo's plan was complete, but the most challenging part still lay ahead. Natalie. That evening, Theo returned home to find Natalie pacing anxiously in the kitchen. Her face paled when she saw him. "Mark called," she said without preamble. "He said he's moving to London. Effective immediately." "What did you do, Theo?" "Nothing he didn't deserve," Theo replied calmly, setting down his briefcase. "But we should talk about why his departure upsets you so much, Natalie. Perhaps starting with these." He placed a bottle of tampered heart medication on the counter between them. Natalie's eyes widened. "I don't know what—" "Don't," Theo interrupted. "I know everything. The affair, the murder plot, the custody plans, all of it. The only thing I don't know is why. We built a good life together." Tears filled Natalie's eyes. Whether genuine or tactical, Theo couldn't tell anymore. "You don't understand. Mark and I have history. He was my first love. And that justifies murder." Theo's voice remained steady. "Planning to kill me and steal my children? They might not even be. They are mine," Theo stated flatly. "Biologically confirmed. But that was never really the point, was it? This was about money. My company, my life insurance, my assets." Natalie's facade cracked. "You have no idea what it's like being married to someone so perfect. The devoted father, the successful businessman, the community pillar. Do you know how suffocating that is? Mark made me feel alive. And wealthy, presumably," Theo added, "considering the Caribbean property purchases." Natalie paled. "How did you—" "I know everything," Theo repeated. "But here's what happens now. Tomorrow, you'll call a family meeting. You'll tell the twins we're separating temporarily while we work on our marriage. You'll cancel the Hawaii trip. You'll continue living here while I move to the downtown apartment above my office. This arrangement continues until I decide otherwise. And if I refuse?" Natalie challenged, though her voice wavered. Theo placed a second folder on the counter. Then these go to the police. Conspiracy to commit murder carries a sentence of 20 to 25 years in Connecticut. With the evidence I've collected, your conviction would be guaranteed. Natalie opened the folder with trembling hands, her face draining of color as she reviewed the contents. Transcripts of conversations, photographs of the tampered medication, bank records showing her withdrawals coinciding with payments to Keller. "Why not just turn me in?" she whispered. "Because unlike you, I'm thinking of our children," Theo replied. "They don't deserve to have their mother in prison, regardless of what she's done. But make no mistake, Natalie, this is not forgiveness. This is pragmatism." That night, Theo slept in the guest room, the house quiet except for the occasional sound of Natalie's muffled crying from the master bedroom. His revenge was taking shape, but he took no joy in it. There was only the cold satisfaction of survival and the fierce determination to protect his children from the fallout of their mother's betrayal. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The family meeting the following evening was exactly as painful as Theo had anticipated. Zoe alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas, while Dylan sat stoically, occasionally catching Theo's eye with understanding beyond his years. "It's just temporary," Natalie insisted, her acting skills impressive despite her circumstances. "Dad and I need some space to work through adult issues." "This is because of Mark, isn't it?" Zoe demanded. "He leaves town, and suddenly you're separating? What happened to Hawaii? What happened to everything you promised?" Theo intervened smoothly. "Mark's business took him abroad unexpectedly. This has nothing to do with him." "Liar," Zoe shouted, tears streaming down her face. "He said he was my real dad. He said we were going to be a family." The room fell silent. Natalie's face went ashen. "Zoe, honey, that's not." "Is it true?" Dylan asked quietly, looking directly at Theo. "Is Mark our biological father?" Theo met his son's gaze steadily. "No, absolutely not. You are my children, biologically, legally, and in every way that matters." "Mom said," Zoe began. "Mom was mistaken," Theo interrupted gently. "I have medical proof. Mark cannot possibly be your biological father." Natalie's hands trembled around her water glass. "Theo, please, the children don't need to." "The children need the truth," Theo countered firmly. "They've been manipulated enough." He turned back to the twins. "I love you both more than anything in this world. Nothing about our current situation changes that. I'll be staying at the apartment above my office, but I'll see you every day. We'll have dinner together 3 times a week, and weekends will remain our family time." "Without Mom?" Zoe asked bitterly. "That's for your mother to decide," Theo replied, his eyes meeting Natalie's across the table. The unspoken message was clear. Her participation would be on his terms. After the meeting, as the twins retreated to their rooms, Natalie confronted Theo in the kitchen. "You didn't have to humiliate me in front of the children," she hissed. "I didn't," Theo replied evenly. "I could have told them everything about the affair, the murder plot, the identity theft. Instead, I gave you dignity you don't deserve." Natalie shrank back. "How long will this charade continue?" "Until I decide otherwise," Theo said. "In the meantime, you'll maintain appearances. You'll attend the children's events, host dinner when scheduled, and behave as if this separation is mutual and amicable." "And what do I get in return?" Natalie demanded. "Freedom," Theo stated simply. "From prison, from scandal, from losing your children completely. It's more than you offered me." Later that night, after packing essentials for his move to the apartment, Theo found Dylan waiting in the hallway. "I recorded them," his son said without preamble. "Mom and Mark, talking about the plan." Theo's heart sank. "Dylan, I've known something was wrong for months," Dylan continued, his young face solemn. "Mark started coming around more often, always asking about your schedule, your health. Then Mom started acting weird, hiding her phone, having whispered conversations. So I used that spy recorder app." He held out his phone, pressing play on an audio file. Natalie's voice emerged clearly. "Once Theo's gone, the insurance pays directly to me as the children's guardian. For $1 million tax-free." Mark's voice responded, "The medication takes time, Nat. We need patience." Dylan stopped the recording, his eyes searching his father's face. Were they trying to kill you? Theo placed his hands on his son's shoulders. Yes, but they failed and they've been stopped. You don't need to worry about this anymore. Are you going to call the police? No, Theo replied. For your sake and Zoe's. Your mother has done terrible things, but sending her to prison would only hurt you more. Dylan's expression hardened with a maturity no 14-year-old should possess. She doesn't deserve your protection. This isn't about what she deserves, Theo explained gently. It's about what you and your sister need. Justice comes in many forms, Dylan. Sometimes the quieter versions are the most effective. Over the following weeks, Theo established a new routine. His days were devoted to rebuilding security protocols at his architecture firm, removing all the backdoor access points Mark had created. Evenings were split between time with the twins and meetings with Nora Blackwell, strategizing the long-term legal implications of a situation. Natalie performed her role in their arrangement with increasing desperation. Her attempts to contact Mark were consistently thwarted. His numbers disconnected, emails bouncing back, social media account deleted. Vernon confirmed that Mark had indeed relocated to London and appeared to be adhering to the agreement. Meanwhile, Theo implemented the next phase of his plan. Through Sebastian's expertise, he began systematically transferring control of the family's assets in a trust for the twins that he alone controlled. The process was meticulous, designed to leave Natalie with exactly what she was legally entitled to, half of their joint assets, while ensuring she couldn't access the children's inheritance or Theo's business holdings. Then came the anonymous tips. The first reached the state licensing board overseeing interior designers, questioning Natalie's credentials and business practices. The second went to the IRS, highlighting discrepancies in her reported income from custom design projects. The third reached her most prominent clients, suggesting irregularities in her billing practices. Each allegation was carefully crafted, substantial enough to trigger investigations, but not directly traceable to Theo. As her professional reputation began to unravel under scrutiny, Natalie grew increasingly desperate. Twice she attempted to access Theo's computer to find evidence of his machinations. Both times, the specialized security protocol Sebastian had installed captured her attempts and cataloged them as further evidence of her untrustworthiness. During a scheduled family dinner 6 weeks after the separation began, Natalie finally broke. "What are you doing to me?" she demanded after the twins had gone upstairs. "My clients are canceling contracts. The licensing board is auditing my credentials. The IRS is questioning 3 years of tax returns." Theo regarded her calmly over his wine glass. "Sounds like regulatory oversight. Perhaps your paperwork isn't in order." "This is you," she accused, voice trembling with fury. "You're systematically destroying everything I've built." "No, Natalie," Theo countered quietly. "I'm simply allowing natural consequences to unfold. Actions have repercussions, even those intended to remain hidden." Her eyes narrowed. "You promised if I played along, you wouldn't ruin me. I promised I wouldn't send you to prison or expose your murder plot to the children," Theo clarified. "Your professional difficulties are entirely separate matters." "I can't continue like this," Natalie whispered, tears forming. "My business is collapsing. My reputation is in tatters. Even my friends are distancing themselves. Perhaps it's time to consider relocation," Theo suggested. "A fresh start somewhere else. Connecticut clearly holds too many complications for you now." The implication wasn't lost on Natalie. "You want me to leave? To abandon my children?" "I want you to make decisions based on reality rather than fantasy," Theo replied. "The reality is, your position here is increasingly untenable. The twins are old enough to decide where they want to live. Given recent revelations, I suspect their preference would be clear in any custody hearing." Natalie's shoulders slumped in defeat. "What are you offering?" "A clean break," Theo stated. "You sign full custody over to me, with reasonable visitation rights. You receive exactly half our marital assets, as required by law, approximately $1.5 million. You relocate outside Connecticut. In exchange, All these mysterious investigations will mysteriously resolve themselves. And if I refuse, then we proceed to a public divorce hearing where all evidence, including the murder conspiracy, becomes part of the official record. Theo's voice remained measured, reasonable. The criminal charges would follow naturally. Your choice, Natalie. 3 days later, Natalie signed the custody agreement Nora Blackwell had prepared. 1 week after that, she listed her design studio for sale. By month's end, she had purchased a condominium in Arizona and announced to the twins her plans to pursue new opportunities in the Southwest. Zoe was devastated, alternating between rage at her mother's abandonment and desperate attempts to rekindle their relationship. Dylan remained stoic, his support shifting entirely to Theo. Both children opted to remain with their father, a decision Natalie accepted with resignation rather than fight. The day before Natalie's departure, she requested a private meeting with Theo at the house that had once been their shared home. He agreed, but took precautions, Vernon monitoring remotely, the meeting recorded for security. Natalie had aged years in mere months. Her polished appearance faded, dark circles prominent beneath her eyes. "You've won," she said simply. "Completely and utterly." "This wasn't a competition," Theo replied. "It was survival. I never intended to fall back in love with Mark," she offered, a weak attempt at explanation. "When he reappeared last year, it was like being 20 again. Exciting, passionate, and worth destroying your family for." Theo couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Natalie looked away. "I convinced myself you'd be better off. That would be a clean break. That the children would adjust. After my convenient death," Theo added coldly. "That was Mark's idea," she whispered. "It escalated gradually. First just leaving you, then the paternity claims, then the rest. By the time I realized how far it had gone, I felt trapped. Save the revisionist history," Theo cut in. "I heard the recordings. You were an enthusiastic participant." Tears slid down Natalie's cheeks. "What happens to us now?" "There is no us," Theo stated firmly. "You'll begin your new life in Arizona. I'll raise our children here. You'll have your visitation holidays, as agreed. The divorce will be finalized in 6 months. And Mark Holloway no longer exists in any meaningful way," Theo replied enigmatically. "The man you knew has been systematically dismantled, professionally, financially, legally. He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering when the other shoe will drop." Natalie shivered involuntarily. "You're a different person than I thought you were." "No," Theo countered. "I'm exactly who I've always been, someone who protects what he loves. You simply never valued that until it was turned against you." The next day, Theo and the twins stood in the driveway as movers loaded the last of Natalie's belongings. Her goodbye was awkward and tearful, with promises to call daily and visit soon. As her car disappeared down the street, Theo placed an arm around each of his children. "It's just us now," he said softly, "but we're going to be okay." Dylan nodded solemnly while Zoe leaned against her father, tears streaming silently down her face. The first chapter of Theo's revenge was complete. The architects of his intended destruction had been systematically dismantled, their plans upended, their futures derailed. But as he guided his children back into their home, Theo knew the true work, rebuilding their trust, healing their wounds, forging a new family dynamic, was just beginning. Revenge had given him grim satisfaction, but it was hollow compared to the challenge ahead, creating a new life from the ashes of betrayal. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. 6 months after Natalie's departure, the divorce was finalized with minimal fanfare. Theo received full custody of the twins, with Natalie granted holiday visitations and bi-weekly video calls. The settlement was exactly as he'd outlined: half the marital assets to Natalie, all business interests, and the family home remaining with him. The court commended their amicable resolution, with no knowledge of the calculated destruction that had preceded it. Life had settled into new patterns. Theo reorganized his work schedule to be home when the twins returned from school. He hired Mrs. Abernathy, a retired teacher with grandmotherly warmth, to manage the household during his occasional business trips. The twins' reactions to their new reality diverged sharply. Dylan thriving with the stability, Zoe withdrawing into resentful silence. One Tuesday evening, Theo found Zoe sitting on the back porch, staring at her phone. Tear tracks marked her cheeks. "Mom canceled our call again," she said without looking up. "Third time this month." Theo sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. Their relationship had become fragile, stretching but not quite breaking under the weight of recent events. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "No, you're not," Zoe replied bitterly. "You wanted her gone. I wanted our family safe," Theo corrected gently. "There's a difference." "Safe from what?" "You never actually explained what happened." Zoe finally looked at him, her blue eyes, so like his own mother's, not Mark's, bright with accusation. "One day everything was normal. Then Mark disappeared. You and Mom separated, and now she's practically vanished from our lives." Theo weighed his words carefully. He'd promised not to reveal the murder plot to the children, but Zoe's pain demanded some truth. "Your mother and Mark were planning to take you away from me. Permanently." Zoe's eyes widened. "But why would—" "They convinced themselves it would be better for everyone," Theo continued. "They made choices that hurt our family deeply. When those choices came to light, consequences followed." "What choices?" Zoe pressed. "What did they do that was so horrible you had to blow up our entire family?" "Ask your brother," Theo suggested quietly. Dylan saw more than he should have. Later that night, Theo overheard the twins' hushed conversation from Dylan's room. He hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but Zoe's raised voice pulled him toward their partially open door. "They were going to kill Dad?" Zoe's disbelief was palpable. "That's insane, Dylan." "I heard them," Dylan insisted. "They switched his heart medication. Mark knew some doctor who helped them. They were going to make it look like a heart attack, collect the life insurance, and take us to the Caribbean." "But Mom wouldn't." "She did," Dylan cut in. "I recorded them. Dad heard it too. That's why Mark disappeared and Mom left. Dad could have sent them both to prison, but he didn't because of us." Silence followed, then the sound of Zoe's muffled sobbing. Theo retreated silently to his study, a mixture of relief and sadness washing over him. The truth, however painful, was necessary for healing. Meanwhile, Theo's professional life flourished with renewed focus. Barrett Architectural Solutions had secured 3 major contracts for sustainable corporate campuses, establishing the firm as an industry leader in eco-conscious design. Theo's innovative approach to integrating natural elements into urban structures had garnered national attention. One particular project, a combined public library and community center for Lakeside, became his passion. The design incorporated elements submitted by local residents, including contributions from both Dylan and Zoe. The groundbreaking ceremony featured the twins helping turn the first shovelful of earth, their faces bright with pride despite the lingering shadows of their family's fracture. Vernon continued providing periodic updates on the exiled players in Theo's drama. Mark Holloway had attempted to rebuild his investment business in London, but found doors mysteriously closed. Financial institutions declined his accounts without explanation. Potential clients received anonymous dossiers detailing his past ethical lapses. He'd recently relocated to Mumbai, presumably hoping distance would sever the invisible strings of Theo's influence. Lawrence Phoenix Keller had established himself in a Costa Rican coastal town, operating an unlicensed wellness clinic for wealthy expatriates. Theo had considered exposing him to local authorities, but ultimately decided against it. Keller lived with the perpetual anxiety of discovery, punishment enough for now. Natalie's Arizona reinvention proved more challenging than she'd anticipated. Her interior design credentials didn't transfer seamlessly across state lines, requiring recertification and apprenticeship hours. Her attempts to establish a new practice faced obstacles, subtle but persistent complications with permits, supplier relationships, and client acquisitions. Nothing overtly traceable to Theo, but the pattern was clear to those who knew where to look. On a crisp October evening, precisely 1 year after Theo had overheard the twins' fateful conversation, he received an unexpected visitor. Sebastian Walsh arrived unannounced, his usual disheveled appearance replaced by uncharacteristic formality. "We have a situation," Sebastian announced without preamble, setting his laptop on Theo's desk. "Someone's probing the digital infrastructure we built around your operation. Sophisticated attempts to access the secured files containing evidence against Mark and Natalie." Theo frowned. "Mark trying to eliminate evidence?" "Unlikely," Sebastian replied. "This is professional-grade intrusion, government level or elite private sector. Far beyond Mark's capabilities." "Then who?" Sebastian's expression grew troubled. "There's more. Financial records show Natalie withdrew $250,000 from her Arizona accounts 3 weeks ago. The money was wire transferred to an offshore entity called Chimera Consulting. Meaning your ex-wife just hired very expensive problem solvers." Sebastian removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes wearily. "These aren't ordinary private investigators, Theo. Chimera specializes in reputation restoration and evidence elimination for high-net-worth clients. Former intelligence operatives, cybersecurity experts, legal specialists." Theo absorbed this information silently. He'd anticipated potential countermoves, but had underestimated Natalie's resources and determination. "How exposed are we?" he finally asked. "Currently secure," Sebastian assured him, "but they're persistent and well-funded. If they manage to access our secured repositories, they could potentially unravel everything, exposing your methods while simultaneously destroying evidence of Mark and Natalie's conspiracy, which would leave me legally vulnerable while exonerating them," Theo concluded grimly. Sebastian nodded. "Exactly. We need to relocate and reinforce all digital assets immediately. And you should consider the possibility of more direct approaches." "Meaning?" "Physical surveillance. Attempts to access your home or office. Possibly approaches to the twins seeking information." The thought of his children being targeted reignited the cold fury Theo had carefully contained for months. "Secure everything," he instructed. "Then I want complete profiles on everyone associated with Chimera Consulting. Natalie has escalated this beyond our agreement." It's time I responded accordingly. That night, after ensuring the twins were asleep, Theo called Vernon and outlined the new threat. Vernon arrived within the hour, bringing with him enhanced security protocols for the Barrett residence, upgraded alarm systems, motion sensors, and surveillance equipment that would detect any unauthorized approach. "We should consider relocating the kids temporarily," Vernon suggested as they reviewed security footage. "At least until we neutralize the Chimera situation." Theo shook his head firmly. "No more disruption to their lives. We defend this position." The countermeasures began immediately. Sebastian implemented digital honeypots, falsified evidence caches designed to mislead Chimera cyber specialists while tracking their methods. Vernon activated his network of former law enforcement contacts to monitor Natalie's movements and communications. Theo himself contacted Nora Blackwell to prepare legal countermeasures should the conflict escalate to courtroom confrontation. 2 days later, the first direct approach occurred. A woman identifying herself as Emma Reynolds from the Lakeside School District requested a meeting with Theo regarding the twins' academic adjustment following familial changes. A background check revealed no Emma Reynolds employed by the district. The meeting was politely declined. Next came a sophisticated phishing attempt targeting the twins' school email accounts. Messages appearing to come from Arizona educational institutions researching the impact of parental relocation on adolescent development. Dylan, now hypervigilant about digital security thanks to Sebastian's tutoring, recognized the attempt and alerted Theo immediately. The escalation continued with a break-in at Theo's office. Nothing was stolen, but the pattern of disturbed items suggested someone had searched specifically for documentation. The firm's digital security captured images of the intruder, a professional operative whose techniques indicated specialized training. "They're getting desperate," Vernon observed as they reviewed the security footage. "Moving from digital to physical intrusion means their cyber attempts failed. But they're attacking on multiple fronts simultaneously," Theo countered. "We need to shift from defensive to offensive posture. The strategy meeting that followed included Sebastian, Vernon, and newly recruited specialist Mira Patel, a former counterintelligence operative with expertise in asset protection. Together, they crafted Operation Boomerang, a multi-layered plan to redirect Chimera's energy back against Natalie and her associates. Step 1 involved controlled information leakage, allowing Chimera to discover select communications that appeared damaging to Theo but actually contained embedded tracking protocols. When accessed, these files would map Chimera's entire operational structure while simultaneously deploying sophisticated monitoring software. Step 2 utilized Vernon's law enforcement contacts to initiate subtle regulatory interest in Chimera Consulting's activities, tax audits, licensing reviews, immigration status checks for key personnel. Nothing directly actionable, but sufficient to create operational friction. Step 3 was more direct. Anonymous tips to Natalie's Arizona neighbors and business associates, suggesting she had fled Connecticut under suspicious circumstances. The resulting social discomfort would increase pressure without explicitly violating their legal agreement. The final component targeted the money. Sebastian identified Chimera's financial infrastructure and implemented a strategy to freeze their operational accounts through reported compliance concerns. Without access to funds, their campaign against Theo would stall. As these countermeasures deployed, Theo maintained his focus on the twins. The anniversary of Natalie's departure had reopened emotional wounds, particularly for Zoe. After learning the truth about her mother's involvement in the murder plot, she'd swung between disbelief, rage, and profound grief. One evening, Theo found her in the family room, staring at old photo albums. She looked so normal, Zoe whispered as he sat beside her. How could she do something so terrible? People are complicated, Theo replied carefully. Sometimes they make catastrophic choices without fully understanding the consequences. Did you ever really love her? Zoe asked suddenly. The question caught Theo off guard. Yes, he answered honestly. For many years. And I'll always be grateful to her for you and Dylan. Even after everything. The good doesn't erase the bad, Theo explained. But the bad doesn't erase the good either. We can acknowledge both. Zoe leaned against him hesitantly, the first voluntary physical contact she'd initiated in months. I'm still angry at her. And at Mark. And sometimes at you. That's okay, Theo assured her. Anger is part of healing. The conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Not complete restoration, but the beginning of reconciliation. Later that week, Zoe asked to join Theo for his morning run, something they'd shared before the family's dissolution. By month's end, she'd begun contributing design ideas for his community center project, her artistic talent finding renewed expression. Meanwhile, Operation Boomerang yielded results. Chimera's digital intrusions ceased abruptly following the honeypot deployments. 2 key operatives left Arizona after immigration queries about their visa status. Most significantly, Natalie's weekly calls to the twins resumed with conspicuous regularity, suggesting she'd recognized the escalation's futility. The definitive victory came in the form of an email from Natalie to Theo's attorney. I acknowledge our agreement remains in force. Recent misunderstandings will not recur. Please confirm no further actions are necessary. Nora Blackwell responded. Agreement adherence noted. Client reserves all rights regarding further breaches. Matter considered resolved pending continued compliance. Translation. Surrender accepted, conditional on future behavior. That evening, Theo sat in his study reviewing the community center plans, a sense of cautious optimism settling over him. The immediate threat had been neutralized. His children were healing. His business thrived. The revenge he'd meticulously orchestrated had achieved its primary objective, protecting his family while ensuring consequences for those who'd conspired against them. Yet something remained unfinished. Some final accounting that would truly close this chapter and allow complete reconstruction. As he contemplated this lingering sensation, his phone chimed with a notification from Vernon, MH returning to U.S. Arriving JFK tomorrow, 10:15 a.m. Details to follow. Mark Holloway was coming back. The final player was re-entering the field. Theo closed the architectural plans and opened a secure messaging app. It was time to complete the circle. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Mark Holloway had aged dramatically in the 18 months since his hasty departure from Connecticut. His once immaculate appearance had deteriorated, designer suits replaced by wrinkled business casual, confident posture now hunched and wary. He scanned JFK's arrivals area nervously before heading toward ground transportation. From his observation position near the coffee kiosk, Theo watched his former rival with detached curiosity. According to Vernon's intelligence, Mark's global relocations had grown increasingly desperate as opportunities evaporated and doors closed. Mumbai had failed him just as London had. Now he was attempting to rebuild in Boston, presumably hoping the distance from Connecticut would provide sufficient buffer. Theo followed at a careful distance as Mark collected his luggage and boarded the shuttle to long-term parking. When Mark reached his rental car, a modest Toyota rather than his customary luxury vehicle, Theo approached. "Hello, Mark." The man froze, key halfway to the door lock. Slowly, he turned, face draining of color. "Theo," he managed hoarsely. "What a surprise." "Is it?" Theo asked evenly. "I would have thought you'd expect me, given recent developments." Mark's eyes darted around the parking structure, seeking witnesses or escape routes. "I don't know what you mean." "Chimera Consulting," Theo said simply. "Natalie's ill-advised attempt to rewrite history. Your return to American soil shortly after their failure. These aren't coincidences. I had nothing to do with whatever Natalie." "Stop," Theo interrupted calmly. "We're beyond lies at this point." Mark's shoulders slumped, the facade of ignorance collapsing. "What do you want from me? I've lost everything. My business is ruined. My reputation is destroyed. I can barely secure a lease, let alone investment clients." "Actions have consequences," Theo replied without sympathy. "You conspired to murder me, steal my children, and assume my identity. Did you expect a different outcome?" "I never would have gone through with it," Mark protested weakly. "It was just talk. The tampered medication in my nightstand suggests otherwise." Theo stepped closer, his voice lowering. "But that's not why I'm here today." Mark backed against the car. "Then why?" "To give you a choice," Theo explained. "Your attempted resurrection in Boston will fail. I've already ensured that. Your next destination will be no different. This pattern can continue indefinitely, or it can end today." "What kind of choice is that?" Mark demanded, a spark of his old arrogance flickering. "Option 1. Continue as you are, moving from city to city as opportunities mysteriously evaporate, constantly looking over your shoulder, never building anything lasting." "And option 2? Mark asked cautiously. "Full disclosure," Theo stated. "You record a complete confession. Your affair with Natalie, the murder conspiracy, everything. The recording remains secured with my attorney, released only if you violate our expanded agreement." "Why would I do that?" "It would be self-incrimination." "Because in exchange," Theo continued, "the systematic dismantling of your life stops immediately. You receive enough capital to establish a modest business in a specified location, far from Connecticut. You start over, permanently severed from your past." Mark stared in disbelief. "You're offering to help me?" "I'm offering finality," Theo corrected. "For both of us. Your continued destruction requires my continued attention. I'd prefer to focus elsewhere." The parking garage fell silent except for distant traffic sounds. Mark studied Theo's face, perhaps searching for deception or ulterior motives. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "The same way I know you've been in contact with Natalie despite explicit prohibitions," Theo replied coolly. "Comprehensive monitoring." Mark flinched at the reminder of his transparent movements. "When would this happen?" "Now," Theo answered, removing a digital recorder from his pocket. "Full confession. Every detail. Then you receive coordinates for a storage locker containing $200,000 cash and documentation for your new identity." "New identity?" "Edward Marshall," Theo elaborated. "Recently divorced financial advisor relocating to Portland, Oregon. Clean credit history, modest but respectable background, no criminal record." "You've been planning this," Mark realized. "I plan everything," Theo acknowledged. It's why I'm still alive. Mark's internal struggle played across his face, desperation warring with suspicion, pride with pragmatism. Finally, he nodded. Give me the recorder. For the next 40 minutes, Mark Holloway detailed his criminal conspiracy, the affair that had continued intermittently throughout Theo and Natalie's marriage, the reemergence in their lives under the guise of business partnership, the gradual escalation from divorce planning to murder plot, the recruitment of Lawrence Keller to provide untraceable pharmaceutical solutions, the offshore property purchases intended for their new life. When he finished, Theo reviewed the recording briefly before placing the device in his inner pocket. Comprehensive and accurate. Vernon will verify against our existing evidence. Now my end of the bargain? Mark prompted tensely. Theo handed him a sealed envelope. Storage locker 734, Grand Central Terminal. Combination inside. The funds, identification, and relocation guidelines are within. The monitoring continues indefinitely, Mark. One misstep. Any contact with Natalie, any return to Connecticut, any attempt to contact my children, and the recording goes public while your new identity evaporates. So I'm on a permanent leash, Mark observed bitterly. You're alive and free, Theo countered. Both conditions were in doubt 18 months ago. I suggest you view this as mercy rather than constraint. He turned to leave, then paused. One question has always bothered me. Did you actually believe the twins were yours? Mark hesitated before answering. I wanted to believe it. It made what we were planning feel justified, reclaiming my rightful family rather than stealing yours. But Natalie admitted the timeline didn't work. She was already pregnant when we broke up in college, but not by me. She'd had a brief relationship with someone else. Who? Theo asked, genuine curiosity breaking through his composed exterior. She never said, Mark replied, only that he wasn't father material, and you were. When I came back into her life, the biological father fiction seemed convenient for everyone. Except you, obviously. Theo absorbed this final revelation silently. Another layer of deception in Natalie's elaborate architecture of lies. Goodbye, Mark. I suggest you use your second chance wisely. There won't be a third. As Theo walked away, leaving Mark Holloway to his diminished future, he felt a weight lifting, not completely, but noticeably. One piece of unfinished business resolved, one loose and secured. Only Natalie remained. The following day, Theo received confirmation that Mark had claimed the contents of the storage locker and boarded a flight to Portland. Vernon's associates would monitor his integration into his new identity, ensuring compliance with the expanded agreement. If all went as designed, Mark Holloway would officially cease to exist, replaced by Edward Marshall, a man with modest ambitions and careful habits. That evening, Theo hosted a small dinner party celebrating Dylan's academic achievement. First place in the regional science competition with a project on sustainable urban infrastructure. The guests included Franco Delgado and his wife, Sebastian Walsh, unusually sociable for the occasion, and Dylan's science teacher, Dr. Claire Donovan. Claire was new to Lakeside High School, having relocated from Chicago the previous year. In her late 30s, she combined intellectual brilliance with genuine warmth that had made her an immediate favorite among students. Her subtle guidance had transformed Dylan's interest in architecture into a passion for environmental design. As guests mingled in the living room, Claire approached Theo with a glass of wine. You should be incredibly proud, she said, nodding toward Dylan, who was enthusiastically explaining his project to Franco. He has remarkable vision for someone so young. He's resilient, Theo replied. After everything that happened, he could have withdrawn or acted out. Instead, he's channeled it into creation. Children often reflect their parents' responses to adversity, Claire observed. You've obviously modeled constructive approaches. Something in her tone caught Theo's attention. Not just polite conversation, but genuine understanding. You speak from experience? Claire smiled slightly. Divorced 5 years ago. My ex-husband had similar issues with loyalty as your ex-wife, though less dramatically executed. The town grapevine has been thorough, I see, Theo noted without rancor. Small communities always are. Claire acknowledged, though I suspect the official version differs from reality. Their conversation continued through dinner, shifting easily between Dylan's academic future, Claire's previous work in environmental education, and Theo's community center project. For the first time in nearly 2 years, Theo found himself engaged in conversation that carried no strategic purpose or hidden agenda. Simply genuine connection with an intelligent, perceptive individual. After the guests departed, Zoe approached Theo as he loaded the dishwasher. "Dr. Donovan's nice," she commented casually. "You should ask her out." Theo nearly dropped the plate he was holding. "What, Dad? You were totally into her," Zoe continued matter-of-factly. "And she was definitely flirting with you." "We were discussing Dylan's project," Theo protested weakly. Zoe rolled her eyes with teenage expertise. "For 3 hours? While making that much eye contact? Please." Theo found himself at a rare loss for words. The idea of dating hadn't entered his mind since the separation, his focus entirely on survival, protection, and reconstruction. "It's okay to like someone, Dad," Zoe added more gently. "We want you to be happy too." "We?" Theo questioned. "Dylan and me," Zoe clarified. "We've talked about it. You've done everything for us. Maybe it's time you did something for yourself." The conversation lingered in Theo's mind as he completed his nightly security check of the house. His children were encouraging him to move forward, a sign of their own healing. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps it was time to build something new rather than continue securing the perimeter against ghosts. 3 days later, Theo did something impulsive for the first time in years. He called Claire Donovan and invited her to dinner. Her immediate acceptance suggested Zoe's assessment had been accurate. Their first date at a quiet restaurant in neighboring Westbrook was refreshingly uncomplicated. Claire was direct about her past, her marriage to a fellow academic who'd systematically gaslight her while conducting multiple affairs, her eventual decision to leave academia for high school teaching, her deliberate choice of Lakeside for its distance from her previous life. "Rebuilding is challenging," she observed over dessert. "Finding the balance between remembering the lessons and avoiding the bitterness." "You've managed it well," Theo noted. Claire smiled. "Most days. Some days the trust issues resurface. I suspect you understand that particular challenge." "All too well," Theo admitted, "though my trust issues come with elaborate verification systems." "The architect in you," Claire suggested, "creating structures to prevent collapse." The evening ended with a simple good night at her door. No artificial complications, no rushed intimacy. They both recognized the need for careful foundations. As spring transitioned to summer, their relationship developed with mindful deliberation. Claire understood Theo's priorities. The twins always came first, his business second, their relationship third. She fit into their lives with natural ease, joining family dinners twice weekly, attending Dylan's science competitions and Zoe's art exhibitions, contributing ideas to the community center design that incorporated educational elements. The twins' response exceeded Theo's cautious expectations. Dylan and Claire bonded over shared scientific interests, while Zoe appreciated Claire's genuine interest in her artwork. Neither child exhibited the resistance or resentment he'd feared might accompany a new adult in their lives. 1 year to the day after Mark Holloway's JFK confession, Theo received a final status report from Vernon. Mark, now firmly established as Edward Marshall, had built a modest financial advisory practice in Portland serving middle-income clients. He maintained full compliance with their agreement, making no attempts to contact Natalie or return east. The operation was classified stable and contained. Natalie herself had gradually rebuilt in Arizona, though at a significantly reduced scale compared to her Connecticut prominence. Her required video calls with the twins continued with strained politeness. During the twins' 2-week summer visit to her condominium, she had made no attempts to extract information or undermine Theo's custody. Vernon classified her status as resigned compliance. The final element of Theo's revenge architecture was now in place. Not destruction, but containment. The threats neutralized, the vulnerabilities secured, the future protected. With both Mark and Natalie effectively nullified as dangers, Theo could finally contemplate true reconstruction rather than strategic positioning. That evening, as he and Claire walked along Lakeside's waterfront after dinner with the twins, she sensed his shifted mood. "Something's changed," she observed, her hand comfortable in his. "You seem lighter somehow." Theo considered how to explain the complex emotional terrain he'd navigated. "I received confirmation today that certain unresolved matters are finally settled." Claire nodded, accepting his deliberate vagueness. "The past properly filed away, as much as it ever can be," Theo replied. He stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "Which means I can focus more completely on the future." "And what does that future look like, in your architectural vision?" Claire asked, her expression open but careful. Theo smiled, a genuine expression without strategic calculation or defensive positioning. "It's still developing, but I know it includes you, if you're interested in a long-term project with complex foundational requirements." Claire laughed softly. "I've always appreciated thorough structural engineering, especially when the builder takes such care with the details." As they continued their walk, Theo Barrett, survivor, protector, rebuilder, allowed himself to envision a future beyond revenge. The final pieces were falling into place, not for retribution, but for restoration. Chapter 9. The Redemption. 3 years after the night Theo had overheard his children's fateful conversation, the Barrett family gathered in their backyard for Dylan and Zoe's high school graduation celebration. The twins, now 18, had transformed from confused adolescents into confident young adults. Dylan accepted to Cornell's architecture program, Zoe heading to Rhode Island School of Design for Fine Arts. The gathering was intimate but joyful. Mrs. Abernathy bustled about ensuring the buffet remained stocked. Franco Delgado and his wife chatted with Sebastian Walsh, who had reluctantly donned a proper button-down shirt for the occasion. Vernon Drake, now semi-retired but still vigilant, monitored the perimeter with habitual professionalism disguised as casual observation. Claire Donovan, now Claire Barrett following their wedding 6 months earlier, organized the twins' graduation gifts while exchanging warm greetings with guests. Her integration into their family had proceeded with remarkable naturalness, her strength and empathy the perfect complement to Theo's protective instincts. As Theo surveyed the celebration, a notification appeared on his phone. "Visitor at front gate. MB requesting entry." Natalie had arrived. Her attendance had been arranged weeks earlier. A carefully negotiated 2-hour visit to congratulate the twins before returning to Arizona that evening. The agreement had been formalized through attorneys, with precise parameters established for the interaction. Theo nodded to Vernon, who positioned himself near the side entrance, then went to meet his ex-wife at the front gate. Natalie stood beside a rental car, looking simultaneously familiar and foreign. 3 years had changed her physically, her chestnut hair now streaked with premature gray, her posture less commanding. She wore an expensive but conservative dress, jewelry minimal, makeup subdued. "Natalie." Theo greeted her with professional courtesy. "The twins are in the backyard. They're expecting you." She nodded, visibly nervous. "Thank you for allowing this." "It's their day," Theo replied simply. "Their wishes take priority." He escorted her through the house, noting her quick appraisal of the changes Claire had introduced: warmer colors, academic books intermixed with architectural volumes, family photographs that now included their blended unit. If the evidence of his rebuilt life pained her, Natalie concealed it well. The twins' reactions to their mother's arrival reflected their distinct personalities. Dylan offered a polite but reserved greeting, accepting Natalie's congratulatory hug with stiff tolerance. Zoe's response was more complex. Initial hesitation followed by genuine warmth, her residual anger visibly softening at her mother's evident emotion. Theo discreetly created space for their reunion, joining Claire beside the dessert table. "Holding up?" she asked quietly, understanding the complicated emotions this visit evoked. "Better than expected," Theo admitted. Seeing her doesn't trigger the old anger anymore. It's just distant, like watching a movie about someone else's life. Claire squeezed his hand. "That's healing," not indifference. There's a difference. The afternoon progressed with surprising smoothness. Natalie maintained appropriate boundaries, making no attempts to monopolize the twins or extract private information. She engaged respectfully with Claire, exchanged civil greetings with Franco and Sebastian, and presented the twins with tasteful graduation gifts, a professional-grade drawing tablet for Zoe, and precision architectural tools for Dylan. As the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Natalie approached Theo, where he stood monitoring the cleanup efforts. "They've grown into remarkable young adults," she observed, genuine pride evident in her voice. "You've done an exceptional job with them." "They deserve the credit," Theo replied. "They've overcome significant challenges with remarkable resilience." Natalie nodded, her expression somber. "Challenges I created." The acknowledgement, simple but unprecedented, caught Theo off guard. In all their post-separation interactions, Natalie had maintained careful neutrality regarding her responsibility, never directly admitting wrongdoing. "Yes," he confirmed after a moment, "but they've processed it in their own ways." Dylan threw his focus on creating sustainable structures, Zoe through her art. They've transformed pain into purpose. Like their father, Natalie noted quietly. Before Theo could respond, Dylan approached, car keys in hand. "Mom, if you want to make your flight, we should leave now. Airport traffic gets bad after 4. The twins had offered to drive Natalie to the airport, a gesture Theo recognized as significant. It represented their ownership of the relationship, their agency in determining its boundaries and possibilities. As Natalie gathered her belongings, she paused beside Theo. "I've never said this properly, and you have every right to dismiss it, but I am truly sorry, Theo. Not just for what almost happened, but for what actually did, the betrayal, the manipulation, all of it." Theo studied her face, searching for the calculation or performance he'd grown accustomed to detecting. Instead, he found only tired sincerity, the words of someone who had finally exhausted the energy required for deception. "I believe you," he said simply, "and I hope you find peace with your choices." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was acknowledgement, recognition that even lives built on devastating choices could eventually find pathways to redemption. Natalie seemed to understand the distinction, nodding once before turning to join the twins for their drive. After the graduation guests departed, Theo and Claire sat on the back porch watching the sunset. The tranquility felt earned rather than temporary, a genuine peace rather than strategic positioning. "The twins handled that well," Claire observed, her head resting comfortably against his shoulder. "They're finding their way through it," Theo agreed, setting their own boundaries, making their own decisions about relationships. "Like someone else I know," Claire smiled, "though your boundaries included somewhat more elaborate surveillance systems." Theo chuckled, acknowledging the understatement. "Necessary at the time." "And now?" Claire asked, her question extending beyond security protocols to the larger emotional landscape. Theo considered this thoughtfully. Over the past 3 years, he had systematically dismantled portions of his protective infrastructure as threats diminished. Vernon's security team no longer maintained daily monitoring of Mark and Natalie. Sebastian's digital tripwires remained in place, but required attention only quarterly rather than weekly. Nora Blackwell's services had been scaled back to routine legal maintenance rather than strategic positioning. "Now we focus on building rather than defending," Theo replied, reaching for Claire's hand. "The twins are launching their own lives. The community center opens next month. Your environmental education program starts in the fall. And us," Claire prompted gently. "Us," Theo repeated, the simple pronoun containing multitudes. "We keep building what we've started, day by day, with careful attention to the foundation." Later that evening, after Claire had gone upstairs, Theo sat in his study reviewing the final plans for the Lakeside Community Center. The project had evolved from simple architectural challenge to personal mission, creating a space where community could flourish despite individual differences and past conflicts. His phone chimed with a text from Dylan. "Airport drop-off complete. Mom's headed back to AZ. Zoe actually hugged her goodbye. Progress?" Theo smiled at his son's perceptiveness. Progress, he confirmed. See both homes soon. As he set down his phone, Theo's gaze fell on the photograph dominating his desk. Not his professional achievements or architectural awards, but a simple family portrait taken at Christmas. Claire, the twins, and himself, all laughing in ugly holiday sweaters, faces alight with genuine joy. The contrast with his previous life was stark. The man who had once meticulously plotted elaborate revenge had transformed into someone focused on building connections rather than severing them. The architect of destruction had become a creator of new possibilities. Revenge had served its purpose, protecting his family, ensuring justice, establishing boundaries that could not be violated without consequence. But revenge alone was ultimately empty, capable of preventing harm, but not of generating good. The true victory wasn't in how thoroughly he dismantled those who threatened his family. It was in what he built afterward, a home where his children could heal, relationships founded on honesty rather than convenience, a community structure that would outlast him. The Barrett family story had become not just one of betrayal and retribution, but of resilience and reconstruction. The wounds hadn't disappeared. They had transformed into hard-earned wisdom, informing but not defining their shared future. Theo closed the community center plans and switched off his desk lamp. Upstairs, Claire waited. Tomorrow, the twins would want to discuss their university preparations. Life continued its forward momentum, no longer shadowed by the past, but illuminated by possibility. His revenge had been ruthless indeed, not in its cruelty, but in its completeness. He had protected what mattered most while creating space for something new to flourish from the wreckage of betrayal. Not just survival, but redemption, not just for himself, but for his children and perhaps eventually, in their own ways, for Natalie and Mark as well. As Theo climbed the stairs to join his wife, he left behind the vigilant strategist who had once calculated each move. In his place walked a man who had learned that the most powerful response to destruction wasn't retaliation, but creation, building something so strong and true that it rendered the original damage irrelevant. The final architect's revenge wasn't vengeance at all, but a life so well reconstructed that the saboteurs became footnotes rather than defining chapters. In that, Theo Barrett had succeeded beyond measure.